All right, I haven't done one of these in a long time, it feels like. All right, well, welcome. If you are just joining us, we're going to talk about sheltering vocabulary today. I got to share my screen, right? So today we're going to talk about that. We're going to do some planning ahead like we usually do. And if you need a certificate of attendance, you can get one of those too. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Want to give credit where credit is due. Some of us did that um, ABC acquisition boot camp last year with the Comprehensible Classroom, Martina Beck. So a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about is one of the lessons in that program. So if you want to dig deeper, I definitely recommend going to that acquisition boot camp because they have some really great stuff. Oh, and I left my book at school. Y'all, this week there's an amazing book that came out. It's called Common Ground. Has anyone heard of this yet? Florencia Henshaw. I ran home real quick because they were doing all these announcements at school. Um, so I was going to pull it up and show it, but it was just so loud. But there is oh gosh, of course now I can't find it. It's a great book. It's called Common Ground. It is second language theory goes to the classroom. I'm trying to find up a picture real quick. I just got mine delivered today in paperback because I don't read online. I cannot do reading online. So I'm going to share this little tab with you so you can see what it looks like. It is a super cool book. Like the first page, and I was hooked. Like this is exactly what I think language teachers need to be looking at right now. If you're new, if you're old, if you think you know what you're doing, it's just a really great refresher. So if you've not looked at this book yet, it's a great tie-in to the stuff that we're going to talk about today. It's Florencia Henshaw and Maris Hawkins. And I'm telling you, page 2, and I was hooked. So if you're interested, that's a great one. All right, let me go back over here. So the whole thing that we're going to talk about, and Myra and I were talking a little bit before we got started today, was about sheltering vocabulary and how it's sort of a revolutionary thought for those of us who grew up doing grammar. So we'll get into that today. I'm going to do my best to give it the old college try, but I'm going to be real honest about what this is a hard thing for me to do in my own profession and in my own teaching practice. So we're just to remember that acquisition, which is like getting that whole language system in your head, it cannot happen without comprehension. So we just need to keep that in our minds that if you don't understand what you're learning, you're not going to learn it. And how do we get that comprehension? We have to shelter the vocabulary so students understand. That's going to lead to comprehension, right? We don't, just like we wouldn't give them a full book in French or Spanish or Russian in the first day and be like, here you go, start reading. Here's War and Peace in Russian. Doesn't work that way. And I think we run into this. Y'all let me know if you run into this too. What we as teachers think is comprehensible may not actually be comprehensible to our students. I distinctly remember early in my career, I would start class and it would be all in French, and I'd do all these gestures and motions that really didn't match what I was saying. I didn't scaffold it really well. And I thought, oh, here I go. I'm speaking French. The kids are loving this. They're going to know everything. And they were getting nothing. It took like 2 days for me to be like, oh, we're going to have to stop. We're going to have to go back. And so this quote from one of the articles that came from Acquisition Bootcamp was that much of the naturally written text, like anything that we're pulling for authentic resources, show of hands, how many of y'all are using authentic resources not meant for language learners? I know Val probably is. Yeah, you guys are awesome though, because that when I look at these things and try to put them in my classroom, I'm like, man, that's so much harder for kids, and I'm trying to like modify the task instead of the text. But it's hard. So this quote really sort of stuck with me. It's not comprehensible for our learners because they really only have a small vocab size, and that's logical, right? We know that they're just starting in this journey. So what is our job as teachers? Our job is that we have to simplify that language. We're not going to give them all of War and Peace on the first day. Maybe we give them a sentence from the book, and they know all of those words. Maybe we take the sentence and chop it into its main components and give them that sentence, you know? It just needs to be something accessible for them. Have y'all ever been in a class where they're talking about something, you have no idea what it is? Like, I'm done after about 30 seconds. If I don't know what's happening and you've lost me and I can't ask a question, I literally start doodling. You know, I'm checked out. I'm done. There's no way. So I try to be cognizant of that in my own classroom because that's not what we want for our kids. So what are we doing here? And this is where Myra and I were talking, where most folks who are in this comprehensible input crowd, they say shelter your vocabulary, not the structures. Meaning, pick the vocabulary that you think they need to have, but don't maybe limit them to present tense or past tense, or throw in those direct objects. Make it as natural as you can, but don't overwhelm them with the amount of vocabulary. And I will be very upfront, this is a struggle for me. I'm still in this thing where I'm like, I want kids to know the vocabulary, and I try to teach it in a comprehensible way, but I don't start with the content. I think I still start with what vocabulary they need to know. So this was a really tough, reflective week for me planning this lesson, because I'm not sure that I'm doing this. But really and truly, I want these to be conversations. I want it to be food for thought where we can all grow, or discuss or argue or do the things you want to do with the information. I'm just delivering it. This was one of the things that I really took away from the acquisition bootcamp, that our brains don't generate language in a grammar system the way that we teach it. What do we all do? We put up the verb chart. Here's how to say I am, you are, he is, she is. That's not how our brains acquire a language. And that book, Common Ground, it immediately on page 2, that's why I was just really in love with the book from the moment I cracked it open. It really goes into some of the linguistic reasons behind why we can't teach that way. A couple weeks ago, I guess a couple sessions ago, we talked about just because you teach it doesn't mean it can be acquired. The thing that gets kids to acquire, or adults to acquire, language is successful, comprehensive input. Sorry, my dog is over here making weird noises. I'm like, stop, you're interrupting me. But anyways, this is especially true for novice learners. And I was thinking about it, and, we all start, Spanish 1, French 1, Russian 1. What do we do on the first day of school? We start with, my name is, your name is, his name is, her name is. We start the lessons. We start our year off with a communicative purpose. We want to get to know each other's names. We do not break down, like in French, it's je m'appelle. We don't talk about what the M is and why you have an apostrophe and why there's an E and not an ER, but there's an S over there. We don't do all that grammar talk. We don't do all the talking about structures. We give the kids the things to say. But then, the next day, we immediately go into, okay, here's the present tense verb. Okay, here are ER verbs. Here's AR verbs. Here are subject pronouns. Here's the preterite. Why do we do that as teachers? We do a really great job the first day, the first week, the first month. And then we just get back into this. At least I do. You guys, I'm sure Val does not. Val is a rock star. Johnny probably doesn't either. Y'all are all rock stars. I'm just learning all the time. But I've noticed that I do the same thing. I have a really strong first unit, and then it switches back into, let's learn some vocabulary, and then let's use it. And so it's a constant struggle for me. I'm being very, very honest today, guys. Probably don't really want to record today, but okay, it's okay. And this I've noticed in my own classes too, especially on that day 1, je m'appelle, me llamo, меня зовут. Look, I got you, Val. Language is stored as chunks. That's one of the 4 words I remember from my year of Russian that I was terrible at. So language is stored as chunks, right? We don't sit here and say, je means I, am is myself, appelle is calls himself or herself. We don't do that. We store it as a chunk. This means that. And I really did a couple years ago start changing the way that I taught, maybe not to this level, but I give the kids the words I want them to know. They're conjugated already. I may take a beat and say, here's what conjugation means. Here's how you do it. Here's the grammar behind it. I just need you to know that this and this are a chunk of the language. And I think my kids have been more successful with that. So I'll do a pause real quick. You guys, anybody got comments or reflections about what we've talked about so far?
I guess. Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Val. You're unmuted. Go for it.
Okay. I guess I'm got lucky because of the alphabet. So in the beginning, we're learning alphabet through the. Then I'm including this in the words. I'm, how to say it? I'm introducing Russian alphabet through international origin words.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, right.
President, combinat, secret, mama, papa, all those tank, bank, they are learning alphabet kind of slowly, but already including the words.
Yeah.
And then I start from the simple sentences. So I'm lucky I have this time, and I still building and start implementing all that genders, kind of
Right.
slowly give them hint, student, studentka, girl, boy. So everything I'm not doing, of course, a heavy grammar on them for the long time, kind of slowly, and then I start implementing the grammar
Right.
inside
Yeah.
of the text or description of the picture or listening activities.
And that's
So
part of it, I think. I think that's the natural progression. Let's
yes,
start.
that's because I'm not a linguist, and this is how I learn
Mhm.
English also through the international origin, because French was also my language in school.
Mhm.
So it's kind of helped me learn English this way, and I'm using this technique. But of course, I research and linguistics. What is it? Rules,
Right.
how to do it and how to teach a second language. So
I
kind of
mean,
everything.
yeah, you're right on the money. I mean, that's I think where a lot of us start, especially with those level 1 classes. We don't start with words that kids can't understand. We pick cognates. You're calling them the international origin words, which is very cool. I like that term. But like I pick words that look just like they do in English. La pizza, le hamburger. So there's a little bit, to me, that's great scaffolding. And you have something that the rest of us don't have, as far as like you have to understand the alphabet before you can understand words in Russian. And we don't have that for French and Spanish. That's not a challenge. But anybody else who uses an alphabet that's not the same as English, yeah, they run into that same challenge. So I think you're right on it. That's how I learned when I was in Russian. It was like, you got to learn the alphabet first, and then you can sound out words and you can recognize some words that are already familiar to you. So I think that's totally right on. Thanks, Val. Anybody else got something to add?
So it remind
Go for it.
one, that we have to know in English, so we had to know and again, right? But in Spanish, when we wanna teach the place and to do something, is totally different because we have saber y conocer, two different
Yep.
verbs. And I always start with the first person. So, and I start with an example. And I tell my colleague, I mean, the other teacher, Spanish teacher in front of me. So in the hall, I said, Mrs. Cosio,
Mm-hmm.
yo la conozco. Yo conozco la señora Cosio, la profesora de español
Mm.
del salón del frente, ¿no? And then I include more words that you already know. So from the previous levels. And then I asked them, so you know somebody very well? So mention, tell me the name. By using this, try to use the phrase. Listen to me. Yo conozco a la profesora Chano, la profesora de francés. And then they start, creating the same, making mistakes. So because part of the acquisition is make mistakes.
Yes,
Enjoy the mistakes. And I say, make the mistake, laugh. We have to laugh. We laugh together.
for
Yeah.
sure.
We go to the other that something very well how to do something. For example, I paint, and my students know how that I. Right now we are doing this. Let me show you.
Mm-hmm. I
These
wondered if you were doing some art over there.
with clay, and then I told them. So that I can model. I'm a sculptor. I can make figures. And then we were doing today, and one student used the scene. Yo sé hacer figuras de arcilla. And I said, what? And you using the language, I love it. He said, oh, yes, Mr. Bro, I've been practicing, okay? That is a good thing. Somebody else, I'm going to give you an extra point.
Nice.
Yeah, but I used the example today again. So that topic was revised, wow, before the spring break. And then I used today, and I say, okay, sé cómo modelar con arcilla, ¿no? And then can you do that? Sí. Puedo, and then I start looking around the same because I have a lot of posters with the scenes to reminders. Another thing about the acquisition is, so give them visual reminders. Without that, let me tell you, so our mission as teachers, foreign teachers, is very difficult
I know. I
because
feel
they,
like I need stock in a poster company because I use them all the time.
yeah, that's it. Okay.
All right, cool. Myra, do you have something to add?
Well, it may not be exactly along the same lines as what Johnny was saying, but when you were talking about sheltering, okay, the vocabulary versus the grammar.
Right.
So this is something I've done the last couple days, and I'll just throw it out there and see what you think, and maybe you guys have a better idea. But so we did OWI, the one-word image thing, at the beginning of the semester. So we have this creature that we created, and we talk about it every time we have a new unit. We add things that we can talk about him.
I love that.
So is that sheltering or not? I don't know.
Okay, so on my end, you sort of broke up, so I think we missed some of that.
Sorry. And you know what? we're driving through the mountain road, so I'm driving home. So
tell you what, let's circle back to it at the end, and maybe you're home.
Sounds good.
And a little bit better.
Sounds good.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm gonna move on to the next section then. Let's see, we're muted. All right. So the next thing that was kind of shocking to me is that our goal is for students to understand 95% of what they're reading or what they're listening to. You know, because we talk all about Stephen Krashen, I+1, input plus a little bit more, get them up there. I didn't realize that what they can already do is 95% of what they're looking at. You know, that's a high bar for me. I distinctly remember, and I know I've given exams where I've had to put a little asterisk next to the word and say, this is what that word means. And it's not probably the best thing for kids to have to keep going back and forth. I've argued with this in my curriculum a couple times. So I just thought it was an interesting number. You know, 95% of what they read, they should be able to access, read or listen to. So with how do we make them understand 95% of something? That's the challenge, right? So we need to bring awareness of the familiarity, I can't say that word, with our students. So what do we do? We need to make sure that they're familiar with words, you know, words they already know, or maybe familiar patterns, which could be cognates. And then we need to have them understand what the unfamiliar words are, okay? So there's two ways. Now, Myra, this might be answering your question. According to Acquisition Bootcamp, there's two ways that you can shelter your vocabulary. Number one, you can simplify the language, or number two, you can simplify the message. Oh, and I have these definitely backwards in my notes, you guys. I may not have the numbers right. Okay, so let's take a look at what simplifying it might be the message looks like. All right, here's the original message. So let's say you wanted to say, I was hungry and there wasn't anything in the house, so I went to the store and bought some food. If you think about that for like a novice or even an intermediate learner, that's a lot to comprehend. How can we trim it down to something much more accessible for our kids? And don't feel like you're on the spot. I'm going to give you like 10 seconds to contemplate. What's the meat of that message? So here is the example. Here's the meat of that message. I went to the store and I bought food. Does it give the same message? Yeah, pretty much.
Maybe you can create like 3 small, very short sentences.
That too. I think that would be a great way to do it too.
Food. I go to store. Something like it. I want to eat. No food. I go to store.
I think that's another great way of handling it. Yeah.
Or you can give it a question. So where do you go when you are hungry? You see? Sure. And then it depends on the level, of course. So for example, my students, they saw places to go and what we do in those places. What is it for? Why? What is the purpose to go to those places? Yeah. Right. And then you can express the need in there.
For sure. Now I'm thinking about this as something kids are listening or that they are reading, maybe not an actual conversation. So something that is interpretive. But you're right. That's a great way of handling it. The other thing that we can do is to simplify the language, right? So this was simplifying the message. The other option for sheltering vocabulary is to simplify the language. So you limit the words to what they're not familiar with. That would be, do you guys ever do embedded readings? I used to see them a lot at like flag conferences, but I never actually did it, where they take like an original an authentic resource, maybe it's like a blog post or a reading passage, they take the original one and then they make these easier versions, right? So you start the kids with a very small version of it. The dog went somewhere, the person did this, and then you're progressively giving them more lessons to be able to read the authentic text at the end. So I sort of think about that for this type of thing. But one of the ways, I think there's 4 ways that you can simplify the language, limiting words that the kids are not familiar with. So number 1, start with high frequency vocabulary. Is there a simpler way to express the same thing? I'm off the top of my head. I can't think of anything. I can't think of anything because it's almost May. I'm sure everybody's exhausted at this point too, but think about, is there a way to make it a simpler message? And something that they highlight, there are 7 key vocabulary sort of identifiers in any language. We can talk about location, existence, possession, identity, preference, motion, and volition. I wanted to, I didn't want to. So as you're preparing things, what are other ways that you could express something that would get the message across? And I think as language teachers, we are probably pretty good at this already. I think we do a really fantastic job of taking big things and making them into sizable chunks that are easy to express and understand. And like every single person said already, we start with cognates too. You know, Val does the alphabet, then she can do the cognates. I'm sure Johnny and Myra and I already start with cognates on day 1. Here's words that you can recognize because you speak English. And this was something interesting too. It's a literacy skill. And I know if you guys are in a school like mine, we are always tasked with building literacy. So that's good to know. There is a caveat there. Don't rely on them too heavily. If your whole class is cognates, you know, I don't know what languages we're teaching, but you know, just be aware. The third way is proper nouns. And I use this a lot in class. Like when I do the town unit, I'll start with like, here's a store, here's a restaurant, whatever. But, you know, when they start asking me, well, how do you say this kind of store, this kind of store? I'm like, just call it by its name. You don't need to say beauty store. Just say, I'm going to Sally's. Or, you know, is Walmart a grocery store, or is Walmart a supermarket, or is it a market? And I'm like, just say Walmart. Just use a proper noun, you know. If you can't think of a subject that somebody teaches, just say the teacher, you know, those kinds of things. And this was the 4th and final way that you can simplify language, is using negation. There are some words, like the opposite words, that are not easy to figure out. So if the kids already know the affirmative, like it's difficult, hey, instead of having to teach easy, just put the word not in front of difficult. I think of like the word in French for lazy is very, very difficult to pronounce. Paresseux. So how could you say the opposite of that? Like not excited, not hardworking. Those are good little workarounds. And that's also a great skill for kids to learn how to talk around words. What is that? Circumlocution, which I'm terrible at teaching that too. So today's fully brutally honest about what a terrible teacher I am at most things. But I just thought these were really good ideas. And all of that is just to say that we want our students to feel confident when they are reading or listening, just like we want them to feel confident in our classes, you know, any point in time. I think our subject area for the longest time has gotten a really bad rap about, I'm terrible at Spanish, I'm terrible at French. I took 2 years of the language, I don't remember anything. My teacher was mean, blah, 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 those kinds of things that have generally been said throughout the ages by American students. So I think as we shift into more of a comprehensible type teaching, it's really going to help if we keep in mind, we want our kids to be confident. To me, the biggest compliment that I get as a teacher is, your class is easy, Miss Borum. I thought it was going to be hard. That's exactly what I want. I want you to feel like this class is easy. I want you to feel confident. I want you to feel successful. And I think if we're not doing that, we might need to do a little bit of reflection. And we also need kids to be able to process what they're exposed to. And I think as an adult and somebody who already went through the learning process, this is where I sometimes don't give them enough time. You know, we've already learned everything. They still have to work through the kinks, and they have to build all of those models in their head. So we need to give them time to process it. And sheltering vocabulary is going to be one of the ways that you can help that. You know, the road to acquisition is long and treacherous. So we want to give them safety and security and the tools to be able to do it well and confidently. And everything that we should be doing, hopefully, in our classes, we are linking the forms that we're teaching, the language chunks, the vocabulary, the grammar, whatever we're teaching, there has to be the link to meaning. It can't just be memorization, right? None of us remembers something we had to memorize, except probably times tables. I feel like everybody remembers their multiplication tables. You know, what a random thing we all had to memorize that actually stuck. And like the order of the planets for me, I remember my teacher made us memorize that, and I still can do her little mnemonic for it. But we do want our kids to make meaning to things instead of just rote memorization. And sheltering vocabulary should help in that process. Y'all, that's about it. That's for me. I'm not trying to like waste all of your time on this afternoon. We got done a little bit early. Before we sort of wrap up, I just want to open it up because one of the things that this community, first of all, it's a community. That means we're connecting with each other. We're having conversations. I don't want it to be just me talking at you and then you go home and you say, look, I did the thing. I want to have time to have conversations. So I don't know, Myra, if you're in a little bit stable or on a real word.
We're almost home. So
all right.
We'll see.
Try your question again.
Yeah,
go for it.
Well, okay, so I was trying to scaffold. So like one day I gave him the 11 chores, and then I said, let's make up a little story with our character. So together we came up with a story and they had to come up with a famous person. And one class said Taylor Swift. Okay, so Taylor Swift comes to visit Engelbert, our character. And so we wrote, what does he have to do to prepare? When we just finished reflexive verbs, I know I'm sounding like I'm grammar oriented, but we did a unit with, getting ready for the day. So said, how does he get ready for her visit? And so we talked about him brushing his teeth and brushing his hair and, all that stuff. And then so we put that in our story. And then I said, okay, well now he has to prepare his house. He's got to clean the house. What does he need to do? And so they told me what he had to do to clean the house and get it ready. So we put all of that in our story. So then, we'll see. Okay, so then like the next day, I'm really trying to move into the past tense. We've never done past tense. Right. And I know this is not the way we're supposed to do it, but I don't know. I can't figure out how to teach it without teaching it. I don't know. So what I did was I rewrote their story in the past, and I just gave it to them. And I said, let's read it. And so there are little things like last night and yesterday and, little clues. And so I'm like, when did this happen? What's different about it? And I made them figure out, the verb endings are different. It's not the same. They're spelled differently. And I say, so what do you think that means? When he's talking about himself, what does he say? When we're talking about him, what does he say? And so they just figured it out by looking at the story. And I had them tell me what they did.
I think it's great. I mean, I think that's a great way.
Like, yes.
I think we're on a mountain road again. Uh-oh.
Okay.
I think we lost you again. Okay, there you are. Okay, we're back.
Oh, am I here?
Now you're here. We can hear you now.
Okay, so then last night I said I'm going to make up a little dialogue between Taylor Swift and Engelbert so that I can introduce the the second person form. So then I put that in. I made it silly and funny. And when you're talking about sheltering vocabulary, I make up these little stories a lot, just from what we put together in class. When I do it, or that they already know, or cognate, or I may add one extra little something, add extra here that hadn't had before, and out in context, which is one of those skills we're trying to teach, is figuring out things in context, figuring out unknown words in context. All right, and then some of the kids know it all and couldn't figure it out, but so I just told them. Anyway, but
I don't know. I don't know. I think it's a great approach. Honestly, I mean, it's such a weird thing to teach past tense, and the only thing that I think of when I hear shelter vocabulary instead of structures is I've always thought, we teach in the early stages. I have a dog. I have this many years old. I have. And I've always thought that would be a great time to just give them the past tense and the future tense at the same time. I have this now, but I did have this when I was younger, and I will have this when I'm older. To me, that's more vocabulary, because we could talk about a dog, right? Like, I have a dog. I used to not have a dog. I will have a dog. So we're focusing on dog, but we're giving them those extra structures that's going to preview, I guess, the different tenses. I'm not sure. Like I said, this is not my strength.
Well, I think I use Claudia Elliott's STAR student interviews. So we do that every day. And just because I've done that, and because she's like stuck little things in there, like past tense here and there.
Yeah.
So when we started past tense this time, I said, "You've already seen this, guys. Do you recognize this?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, that means such and such." Because it's not brand new. And I think I would never have done that before. I think
that is the crux of this whole shelter vocabulary, not structures, is we were taught, and we probably do teach, start with present tense, then do past tense, then do imperfect, then do future, then do the hard structures. And I think that's sort of the big difference here, is instead of thinking about teaching kids grammatically, we teach kids thematically and using natural language, just pausing to stop and tell them what this means, I think. But I think you've hit, I think that's the big thing we're trying to break, is why do we just do present tense level 1, past tense level 2, future tense level 3, like what Claudia does and what a lot of these other folks who are fabulous, they start those things at the beginning.
Yes.
So, I used to have a cat. I will have a lizard when I'm 14. Those kinds of things. That's my thinking on it.
I just know I still haven't figured it all out. I'm trying to learn it, but
I feel like we will all say that on our retirement ceremony. I'm still trying to figure this thing out, but thanks for the 30 years of teaching,
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So that is the end of our sort of lesson, but I want to do a little planning ahead. So when we started Starlight, it's been over a year ago now. Yep. February was a year. The mission and vision was for us, by us. We really want teachers who are like us. Like, I'm the only French teacher. Val's the only Russian teacher in like half of our state. We want to be a community. You've heard me say this word a lot. Community of teachers who are in rural and small town settings, who maybe don't have the resources, don't have the collaboration, don't get to talk to a lot of other people who face their same professional challenges every day. So that's sort of where everything that I plan and everything that we try to do is meant to fill a need that we don't get as rural language teachers. So I want you to start thinking about, how can we use this as something that's going to help you? I definitely don't want this to be I'm going to log in on Thursday, I'm going to sit and listen, and then I'm going to get my certificate and look, I've done what I need to do, and I'm just going to zone out. If that's what you need, fine, we can do that. If you need other things, I want to provide that place. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that in May, and it'll be a quick meeting. Or here's my question. Do we want to have an actual meeting, or do you want to have some sort of asynchronous thing like a Jamboard or a Padlet for y'all to do some brain dump of ideas and wants and needs for next year? And I'm going to follow that up by saying that tomorrow, when all of this video is processed and I put it on the YouTube link, I'm going to send that out to everybody and say, hey, it's on the YouTube channel. And also, here's a survey. And the survey is going to ask some real specific questions. Myra, can you hear me okay? You good? The survey is going to ask questions that's going to help guide sort of what I plan for next year, because my goal is to get all of the dates, all of the topics. I would love to have a yearly calendar by July so that you guys can plan around, or we can adjust, or I just don't want you guys to not have things on your calendar and then I send you an email that, hey, we're meeting this afternoon and you haven't had a chance to plan for it. I want to be very upfront and honest and transparent about where we're going, what we're doing, which means I need you guys to tell me what you need. Like for me, I'm moving to a new school. It's even smaller. We're going to have a new team of teachers who's been all over the board. For me, I want to share resources. I want to get ideas from other people. To me, I really want collaboration time. I want to sit and say, all right, Unit 1, what do you guys teach? How do you teach it? What do you include? Here's what I do. That would be the thing that I want, because Johnny can tell you we don't really have a lot of that where we are, because he teaches this level, she teaches this level, I teach this language. So that's the thing that I'm missing, that I'm hoping eventually we can do with Starlight. If it's not there yet, it's not there yet. So think of these things. You'll get an email tomorrow. There will be plenty of space for you to say, hey, I could use this. Hey, I need this. And we're very, very lucky that we are supported by the DOE. So even if it's like actual stuff that you need, put that in the list and I'll send it to Patrick and be like, here's what my people need. So that's sort of something to keep in your head. And then tomorrow, if you'll just please respond to that little survey, and I'll keep sending it out over and over and over, because I don't want to just do the thing that works for Shannon if it doesn't work for everybody. So with that being said, there's your attendance certificate if you need it. If you'll scan the thing, you'll get an automatic certificate, and we can open up if you guys have questions or comments, if you want to chat for a little while, or if you want to just go home. I get it. I'm going to stop the recording though. Thank you guys for coming. It was good to see everybody. I feel like it's been forever since we've met. I don't even know what day it is anymore.
Thank you.